Today we're looking at new kinds of pronouns and a short introduction to intransitive verbs that take the dative. You might ask yourself to start with, what is a pronoun? And a pronoun is simply a word that takes the place of a noun. So we are going to learn a set of pronouns that can take the place of a noun. So some of these we call demonstrative pronouns. That is, they point things out. So words like this in the singular, or these in the plural, that or those. We call these demonstrative pronouns. And so we can say this is hard, where this is standing in for some other kind of concept or idea or thing. That's why it's a pronoun. We're also going to learn a word that can mean this or that, and also he, she, it. So it is a special kind of pronoun that we're going to learn. And then we are also going to learn one that is related, that means the same. That is, we can say the same man, the same woman, the same thing. It can, if we choose, have it stand in for a noun. And another one, the very one, and we'll see what that one looks like too. For the most part, these pronouns that we use, especially the demonstrative ones, the ones that are telling us about which kind of thing we're talking about, where something is, work exactly the way that they do in English. So we can say, this book is good. And in this case, this is really an adjective and it modifies book. So it agrees with book in case, number, and gender. Or we could say, this is good. And we have to know what it is that we're talking about, what the this is. So if it's referring back to the book, we would just have a pronoun that is masculine, singular, nominative, because that is what book would be. And that is really how pronouns work in English too. We can use them to modify something as an adjective, or we can use them on their own. And the thing that is tricky about pronouns in Latin is that they tend to follow the unus nauta model more than they follow the regular first-second declension model that you know for adjectives like bonus a un. So if you see here, we have a nominative that is very strange. We have hic, haec, hoc. But then you can see in the genitive, they end in ius, just like all of those other genitives do. Huius, huius, huius. And then we can see that we have this form, huic, 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 which ends in ic instead of just I, the way that nullus or unus do. And then we have this additional weird form, hunc, honk. But you can see hoc is the same as this because they're always the same. And then hoc, hoc, hoc. But if we go to the plural, it becomes a little more regular. So we have he, hi, and hike. We have to be careful with this one, especially because it is the same as this one. Horum, harum, horum, his, his, hos, has, hike, because those two are always the same, and his. So you can see that with hic, haec, hoc, we do have a handful of forms. The singular is kind of strange, especially because it has all these C's at the end. Without them, it would be more regular. But in the plural, except for hike, it is really on that first-second model. So not unlike unus nauta. And hic, haec, hoc is the oddest. Let's look at the rest. Ille, illa, illud is the pronoun for that, and in the plural, those. And here you can see, again, that in the nominative singular, ille, illa, illud, so we have this, which is not unlike aliud, if you remember. And we do have this E here, which is a little unusual. But then here we have ilius, ilius, ilius. That's like our unus nautas. Ille, 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 like our unus nautas. And then illum, illam, illud. Illo, illa, illo. Completely regular there. And again, in the plural, you can see it's totally regular. Illi, illi, illa, illorum, illarum, illorum, illis, 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 illus, illas, illa, illis, illis, illis. So it is only in these particular places that it's irregular, and the places where it's most irregular are in these particular unus nautai ways. So it is irregular, but irregular in a way that you're already familiar with. We also have this pronoun iste, ista, istud. So you can say, I think we just saw that, those, with ille, illa, illud. And you would be right. But these have slightly different meanings. So this means that over there. So it's something, if you're pointing in some kind of direction, it's going to be something that's sort of far away from you, probably. But the other thing about it is this can refer to somebody famous. Oh, that famous man, Ille. And it tends to have a really positive connotation. Like, oh, that great guy, that noble man. Iste, ista, istud is sort of the opposite. It can mean that, but it's more like that scoundrel. And so you don't see iste nearly as much as you see ille, and when you do, it often has this negative connotation. So that's something to keep in mind. But you can also see that in terms of its form, it is just like ille, except that it's got this st in it instead of the double L. But it's got the E here, ista, istud. And then we have istius, 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 isti, isti, isti. We're going to have istud here because those are always the same. And everywhere else, it's completely regular. So this follows the same pattern that ille, illa, illud does, and is pretty close to hic, hi, cock, which is our most irregular one. Is, ea, id is really interesting. Often, and this is how we tend to think of it, it means he, she, and it. So if you think of the id from sort of Freudian psychoanalysis, it's that uncontrollable, undifferentiated part of the mind, the id, and that's because it's just a giant it. It's not even a thing or an individual. But these while they can be these personal pronouns, he, she, it, they can also be demonstratives. And when they're demonstrative, they can mean this, these, or it can mean that. So it's more of an undifferentiated, when you just want to kind of point something out particular, but you're not really talking so much about whether it's close to you or far away from you. You're just trying to set something apart and make it clear that you're talking about a particular thing, this thing, that thing. You might use is, ea, id as an adjective in that situation. But most often, we're going to see it in this context as meaning he, she, it. And you can see that these are a little strange too, although the common feature is we have eius, 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 so that ius, and ae, ae, ae with the I. And then you can see we have a am, and id, because these are always going to be the same, whatever they are. Ao, aa, ao. And then in the plural, they're completely regular. So again, it's really only the singular, and really in particular these forms that are strange. And of course, we have to keep in mind that these is and id start with I's, not E's, whereas we have E's the rest of the way through. There are a few others to note. So this should say idem, eadem, idem means the same, and we decline these like is, ea, id with just this dem on the end. So it's going to be eius dem, eidem. You can see that the dem is really just a suffix, and that suffix part is the part that really means the same. And we have these other forms that are like ista, well, iste, ista, istud, or ille, illa, illud. We have ipse, ipsa, ipsum, and this means the very one or oneself. So I might say ipsa librum lego. I myself read the book. So, or I'm the very one reading the book. Okay, so this is really more of an intensifier, and that's how we tend to see it. So just to review, we have these forms hic, hike, hawk, that means this, or in the plural these, ille, illa, illud, that means that over there, or that famous one, iste, ista, istud, which means that, or that scandalous, that horrible, that awful. And we have is, ea, id, which can mean this or that, or it can mean he, she, it. And in addition to those, we have these extra sort of forms, idem, eadem, idem, which means the same, where we're going to decline this part. And we have ipse, ipsa, ipsum, which means the very one or oneself. All of these pronouns are going to decline with that ius in the genitive singular, and an I in the dative singular, and a few other oddities perhaps here and there, but this is the thing to remember, that they are like those unus nauta words that you already know. Just as is, ea, id often mean he, she, it, those are what we call personal pronouns. We also, it's probably a good time to learn our other personal pronouns, although we have been using these off and on quite a bit for a long time. So I and you, singular, we and y'all, the you plural, look like this. And these are probably becoming pretty familiar to you by now because they tend to crop up here and again. You can see ego means I, but it's the only one where we don't have the letter M. And after that we have mei, mihi, me. U has this tu, so if you know other languages like Italian or French or Spanish, this will feel familiar. Tu, tui, tibi, te, te. And nos and vos also will seem familiar as well. Nos, nostrum or nostri, nobis, nos, nobis, vos, vestrum or vestri, vobis, vos, vobis. the most important thing to know is that these genitive forms are not used for possession. No possession. If we want to talk about my book, for example, we're not going to say liber mei. We're going to say meus liber. You already know how to do this. You use these possessive adjectives. And that's what we do. But we do use mei and tui, nostrum, nostri, vestrum, vestri, for other uses of the genitive that we have looked at. So a genitive of an objective genitive, for example, or a partitive genitive, those are situations where we would see these. So usually mei, tui, nostri, vestri we would see for a an objective genitive, for example, and nostrum and vestrum we would see with partitive. The other thing that we can use those personal pronouns for is what we call reflexive usages. And reflexives are really just when the person receiving the action is also the person doing the action. So we often think about words where you do something to yourself like lawo, wash. So in English you just say I wash, I suppose, but you could say I wash myself, and in that case you would say me lavo. I wash myself. I'm not washing the dishes, I'm washing my body, me lavo, and that would be reflexive. Reflexives really only occur in the genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. You don't really have nominatives for reflexives because you yourself are the one doing the action, so you don't need to say ego me lavo. That doesn't really make sense. You just say me lavo. But you can use something like ipse, ipsa, ipsum to intensify a subject. So if you really wanted to say, I myself wash myself, then I, since I am a woman, would say ipsa me lavo. I myself wash myself. But these forms can be used in other cases as well, depending on what it is you want to emphasize. So you could say ipsam me lavo, where you would say, I wash my very self, my self. So that would be super intensified in a way that you probably don't need. So those forms, mei, mihi, me, tui, tibi, te, nostri, or vestri, nos and vos, those are the reflexive forms. But we don't have reflexive forms for is, ea, id, because is, ea, id is this pronoun, this demonstrative pronoun we're using. So if we want to use demonstratives for the third person, either singular or plural, that is, if we wanted to say he washes himself or they wash themselves, we use these forms of say. And these are, you can see there's no nominative, sui, sibi, say, and these you'll know whether or not it's singular or plural because you'll know what the verb is if it's singular or plural, and that will tell you what your reflexive pronoun is. So you could say, if you wanted to say he washes himself, say lawat. Or you could say they wash themselves, say lawant. And you know they are washing themselves because the verb is plural. So if it's reflexive, say has to be plural too. Finally, the last piece of information in this chapter is about verbs that take the dative. This is really going to be the biggest part of the vocabulary we have to learn for this chapter. There are a number of verbs that take the dative. These verbs take the dative in Latin because they're what's called intransitive. That is, they're verbs that can't take a direct object. But that in English is not really going to help you because some of the verbs, the way that we translate them, they seem like they do take a direct object, or they're verbs that do take a direct object in English. So we just need to memorize them. There are verbs like credo, to trust. In Latin, you trust someone in the dative. Ignosco, to forgive. We forgive people in the dative. And there is quite a list of common verbs. Placeo, we please people in the dative. All kinds of things. So it may be possible for you to make sense of some of them and others probably not. So your best bet is really just to begin to review them and learn to expect to see them with a dative. So that's it. We really have these forms that we need to begin to familiarize ourselves with. Hic, haec, hoc, ille, alla, illud, iste, ista, istud, ipse, ipsa, ipsum, is, ea, id, idem, eadem, idem. Those are the important ones. And then pronouns, ego, tu, nos, and vos, remembering that these can also be reflexives, and when we need the third person reflexive, we're going to use se. And that is it.